So you want to master the art of whiteboarding? Well, it takes just a little bit of practice, patience, and using tools like a lightboard or a whiteboard in your own home to gain that confidence. And that's what we're going to do today is a quick overview of some shapes, both simple and complex, and turn that into a full-blown Veeam diagram. So again, looking at the foundations, it's important to practice this stuff. At first glance, it may be easy to brush off the idea of doing simple lines and shapes, but you'll see how that transition again gives you that confidence. So starting off with simple, well, there's one simple shape for you. So if we go ahead and actually number this out, so the first one would be a straight line. We can do a lot with this. So this is good for multiple things. We'll use this to build other shapes, obviously, but more specifically, we can give it a dash line and even use this as a way to underscore different virtualized environments, physical, whatever. There's a lot of reasons why we would use these straight lines. The second one, much like the line, just a simple square. Now, that square can be used for all sorts of components, such as a proxy, WAN accelerator, the list goes on. But if you come in, you just give this little P here. Of course, that may stand for a proxy in the moment. It makes sense for the discussion at that time, but you may want to write this stuff out. For example, if somebody comes back into the room, say next day, 2 days later, they're going to know what that is, imperatively. It's absolutely a proxy, so they know what conversation took place, right? It kind of jostles their memory and gets Veeam back up front. Now, you can also do some pretty clever things. Before we go on to the third one, if you harken back to the good old days, the horizon point. I used to love drawing stuff in class, like buildings and architecture, and using that point of horizon. So if time allows and you have that confidence, you can start building out those more complex and elegant shapes. So the third one is an iteration of that as well. So if I go in to horizontal, to vertical, well, why are we drawing a rectangle? It's just like a square. I just draw them differently than I draw my squares. Typically with my squares, it's one fell swoop. With the rectangles, it's two horizontal lines followed by those two verticals. And to kind of keep this in parity, we'll go ahead and make this a 3D shape as well. Now, from there, we can use this as like your source host. We can use it as your virtualized environment. And you can use different shapes inside of this. So for example, maybe we give this a quick circle, boom, 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 square, circle, square, circle. Pretty decent way of illustrating that's going to be your source host. Got some drives, some blinky lights, makes some pretty good sense. Again, looking better than just writing it out on the board or drawing a simple little square. So we've got 3 here. Let's go ahead and talk about 3 more, and we'll turn this into maybe a dozen or a baker's dozen different shapes here. So number 4, let's go ahead and start off with that triangle this side. So triangle is not used as much, but I think it's important to practice this because you can use this for not just like, perhaps, dash lines, right? Maybe you want to use this for shared storage or storage itself being presented to a host. You may use that in different angles and whatnot. But practicing that does get you better with those angles, and you can just draw triangles better and more accurately. And yeah, number 5, let's talk about the circle. Circle, probably one of the hardest ones. I just make one generalized soup, but this can be used for many different reasons. Perhaps you've got an individual in the environment that's the Veeam expert, where you can come in and have some fun, give them a smiley face, or even use different colors. And I think that's a good way to segue. For example, maybe there's a pain point the customer is explaining or presenting. You can now put them in that pain point, kind of make it an open wound, if you will, and then make that transition where, hey, you put Veeam in, you're going to be a happy camper. So simple shapes here. Last but not least, let's go to number 6, would be that cloud icon. So a cloud icon is almost like a circle or an enlarged M, if you will. I'll make 2 strokes and start a new one. And I make these large. So as I'm drawing this, I'm kind of keeping in mind like what discussion is taking place. Are we talking about like Veeam Cloud Connect? Are we talking about long-term storage and say AWS? Well, at that point, I'm kind of making my diagram in my head, so I know to make enough room without making it overly large. So for example, maybe we want to talk about AWS storage. Well, some of those quick icons you can make, and also keeping in mind you want to keep this conscious to the color. Being that AWS has those orange buckets, we can just come in, give it those few shapes. And there's our AWS bucket. Or perhaps we're talking about that Cloud Connect. I just love this cloud and how we can convey so many different aspects of data protection all within one clear icon here. So here's a handful, and now we'll turn these more than 6, right? So we got 6 basic shapes, including cloud. We also have a source host here, a proxy with proxy written underneath, as well as some smiley faces. But if we wanted to quickly draw this out, once you get comfortable with this, the rest is just a piece of cake. So if I come in, give it that rectangle, let's do 2 more. Now perhaps this is our VMware. And if possible, write down what version it is. And of course, this being our source host. Then we can come in and maybe give some connectivity. Now, that being said, let's be specific about our color. So we want to go ahead and draw the data store. This is a different one. We haven't talked about this one yet, but this is essentially, as you can see, 3 different rectangles. Just join them together. Now we got a data store. Use that dash line. And now we have everything we need except for virtual machines. So virtual machines, going back to that square, notice instead of just doing 4 different lines, just quick and easy to make these illustrations. And come in and give it some lettering. Again, this is the, making this that long-term impact. Because you never want to erase this. As you leave that room, whether it's a physical room or even in this virtual world, if this is on, say, what's the whiteboard, Microsoft Whiteboard, you can print this out, email it as a PDF, and that way, if it's well iconed and well labeled, it's easy to remember. It's easy to recall what was going on. Now, going back to our colors and proxies and Veeam, maybe we're talking about a Veeam deployment. In this example, we'll use, say, a simple deployment of Veeam. Perhaps we're installing everything on this one virtual machine. Kind of bold this in. And at that point, we have our Veeam backup and replication deployment. And perhaps we want to build out a proxy and we want to icon that. We can come in and highlight another machine. Perhaps we got some leftover resources here. Want speedy backups and make that proxy. And being green, I don't know why I capped that, because we want to keep this in concert with our color scheme. So if we're talking about repositories, right, we do that dash line down to perhaps a repository. Again, labeling everything. And we'll draw that cloud one more time. We've got our first backup job complete, but that's not satisfying our 3, 2, 1. So we want to get data into the cloud, and we'll keep this example pretty brief. But essentially, going back to the idea, I like drawing these little accent marks. You can draw some clouds behind it if you want. Have fun with this, right? Whatever time permits. If perhaps you're having dialogue with the rest of the members of that team, and also ensuring that you're catering to all those different learning styles. Right? You got the visual, kinesthetic, auditory. The visual and auditory, this works really well by default. But if you do see somebody that's eager and wants to get involved, maybe drawing out their architecture, invite them up. It's a great way to have everybody involved in the conversation. So now we'll just circle, boom, boom, boom. Now we have our object, and then last but not least, maybe Cloud Connect comes up, right? We want to use the same cloud, talking about that again. Boom, boom. That distinction in color, I think, is what really hammers that point home. So this is a quick way. I'll give you some bonus ones, if you will, just some extra ones I like to draw up. Perhaps you're talking about the Exchange Explorer, right? A quick square, draw a triangle within it, got an envelope. Great way to illustrate the fact that we can now restore those emails right back into an inbox. Or we've got the happy face. Well, we got the triangle. Let's use the triangle a little bit more, right? So within that environment, there's an individual, perhaps responsible for that Veeam deployment. Notice it's a head with a body, right? Real simple. Much better than a stick figure. I think I'm all about being childish and staying young. We can keep this a little more mature. We can even give this guy a little tie, and now he's super happy because Veeam is working wonders in his environment. That really about wraps it up. And I think at that point, once you start getting creative, you build that confidence, and this becomes a blast. And you get really great conversations and really have the ability to approach a whiteboard with confidence and really convey that Veeam message. Hope this worked. Hope this helped. Have a great day. Thanks again.